First contact at Luna Base. The warning klaxons of Luna Base jolted Commander James Harrison awake at 0300 Earth Standard Time. He'd barely managed 4 hours of sleep after a grueling 16-hour shift monitoring the Quantum Array, Earth's most advanced deep space detection system. The array had been picking up bizarre energy signatures for weeks, but nothing that warranted a red-level alert. "Status report," he barked, rushing into the command center while still zipping up his uniform. The holographic displays cast an eerie blue glow across the faces of his night shift crew. Lieutenant Patel's fingers danced across her console. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy signature approaching from the dark side of the moon. Whatever it is, it's unlike anything in our database." James leaned over her shoulder, studying the readings. The energy pattern pulsed with an almost organic rhythm, defying known physics. "Location? It'll pass directly over us in approximately 3 minutes, Patel responded, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Sir, it's slowing down." The entire command center fell silent as the massive viewing window automatically polarized, protecting their eyes from a sudden burst of light. Through the filtered glass, James watched in awe as space itself seemed to fold, revealing a vessel that challenged everything he thought he knew about spacecraft design. The ship appeared to be composed of living crystal, its hull flowing like liquid mercury while maintaining perfect structural integrity. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of Luna Base's main dome, yet it moved with impossible grace for its size. "All stations, battle ready," James ordered, though his instincts told him this wasn't an attack. The ship's movements seemed erratic, almost wounded. "But hold fire unless I give direct orders." Before anyone could acknowledge his command, a voice touched their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. "Luna Base, help, critical system failure." James pressed his temples, fighting off a sudden headache from the alien communication. "Can we get a medical team to Docking Bay 2? He didn't wait for confirmation before heading there himself, ignoring regulations that required the base commander to stay at his post during first contact scenarios. The docking procedure happened faster than anyone expected, the alien vessel somehow adapting to their primitive human technology in seconds. As the airlock cycled, James found himself face to face with the most beautiful and terrifying sight he'd ever encountered. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her form humanoid but clearly alien. Her skin rippled like the surface of an opal, shifting colors painting patterns that seemed to reflect her thoughts. Where hair should be, tendrils of pure energy swayed gracefully, responding to unseen currents. But it was her eyes that captured James's attention, 3 of them, arranged in a perfect triangle, each one containing what looked like a miniature galaxy. The alien took one graceful step forward, then collapsed. James moved without thinking, catching her before she hit the deck. Despite her height, she felt surprisingly light in his arms, like holding captured starlight. "I am Lyria," her thought voice whispered in his mind, weaker now. "Stellar ambassador of the Crystalline Dominion. My ship, Sabotage, must warn." She didn't finish the sentence, her consciousness fading as her skin's brilliant patterns dimmed to a concerning gray. James lifted her carefully, shouting for the medical team he could hear approaching. "Get Dr. Reyes down here immediately," he ordered as the medical team arrived with a hover stretcher. "And someone contact Earth Command. Tell them." He paused, looking at the unconscious alien ambassador in his arms, "Tell them everything's about to change." He had no idea just how right he was, or that within 24 hours, he would find himself accidentally engaged to the alien diplomat through an ancient custom that would either forge peace between their civilizations, or start an interstellar war. As Lyria was rushed to medical, James caught his reflection in the polished surface of the airlock door. His expression matched exactly how he felt, completely and utterly out of his depth. But there was something else there too, a spark of excitement he hadn't felt since his first space flight. Whatever was coming next, it would definitely be interesting. The Trials of Two Worlds. "You did what?" James stared at Dr. Reyes, his chief medical officer, wondering if the stress of the past 24 hours had finally broken one of them. I gave her water, Reyes repeated, running her hand through her gray-streaked hair. She was dehydrated, showing signs of distress. It's basic medical care, Commander. And this somehow means I'm getting married? The alien ambassador, Lyria, had recovered enough to sit up on the medical bay's examination bed, her crystalline skin now shimmering with what James was starting to recognize as amusement. In my culture, her thought voice explained, offering sustenance to one in need is the first step of the bonding ritual. When Dr. Reyes gave me water, she acted as your proxy, since you are the commander of this facility. James pinched the bridge of his nose. And catching you when you collapsed? The second step, offering physical support in a time of vulnerability. Lyria's energy tendrils swayed with what might have been embarrassment. The third step was completed when you provided sanctuary for my damaged vessel. 3 steps, James said flatly. 3 completely normal, human responses to someone in distress, and now we're engaged? A new thought voice entered the conversation, this one carrying the weight of centuries. The holographic communicator sprang to life, displaying the imposing figure of High Chancellor Voss of the Crystalline Dominion. His crystalline form was darker, more angular than Lyria's, with patterns that spoke of power and authority. The bonding ritual is one of our most sacred traditions, Commander Harrison, Voss intoned. It cannot be undone without severe diplomatic consequences. Especially given Ambassador Lyria's status. James caught something in Lyria's expression, a flicker of patterns he couldn't quite interpret. What status would that be, exactly? I am. Lyria hesitated, her patterns dimming slightly. I am first daughter of the High Chancellor. My diplomatic role is secondary to my position as heir to the Dominion. James sat down hard in the nearest chair. Not just an ambassador. A princess. He'd accidentally gotten engaged to an alien princess. Earth Command is going to love this, he muttered. As if on cue, his communication device chimed. The holographic display split, showing Admiral Wong's stern face alongside the alien chancellor. Commander Harrison, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I understand congratulations are in order. Admiral, I can explain. No need. The situation has been discussed at the highest levels. Wong's expression softened slightly. Actually, this could work in our favor. The Crystalline Dominion is centuries ahead of us technologically. A diplomatic marriage could fast-track Earth's integration into the galactic community. There is, however, one small matter to address, Chancellor Voss added. The trials of worthiness. Lyria's patterns flared with concern. Father, surely given the circumstances. The law is clear, Voss interrupted. Any who would bond with the first daughter must prove their worth through the 3 trials. Commander Harrison has 3 lunar cycles to complete them, or the bond will be forfeit, along with any potential alliance between our peoples. James looked between the 2 holograms, then at Lyria. Her third eye caught his gaze, and in its galactic depths, he saw something unexpected, hope, and maybe a touch of fear. Not for the trials, he realized, but for him. What exactly do these trials entail, he asked. The trial of mind, where you must navigate the crystalline archives, Voss explained. The trial of body, where you face the guardian of the ancient gates. And the trial of spirit, where you must harmonize your energy with the heart of the Dominion itself. And if I fail? Then both our peoples will know that humans are not ready for true partnership with the Dominion. No pressure, then. Just the future of human-alien relations resting on his ability to complete 3 impossible tasks. James straightened in his chair, years of military training kicking in. When do we start? The first trial begins at moonrise, Voss declared. Lyria will instruct you in our ways until then. The Chancellor's image flickered. And Commander, try not to die. It would make the diplomatic situation rather awkward. After both holograms faded, James turned to Lyria. Your father seems charming. A sound like wind chimes filled his mind, her laugh, he realized. He's actually being unusually accommodating. Normally, there would be 7 trials. Lucky me. James stood, offering her his hand without thinking. Well, if you're going to teach me your ways, we should probably start now. Though maybe we could begin with something simple, like how to read your emotional patterns? Lyria took his hand, her crystalline skin warm against his. The contact sent a tingling sensation up his arm, and he noticed her patterns shift to a deep, rosy hue. That particular pattern, she said softly, means you're already learning faster than you realize. As they left the medical bay together, James couldn't help but wonder if this accidental engagement might turn out to be the best mistake he'd ever made. But first, he had to survive the trials, and something told him the High Chancellor wouldn't make that easy. Conspiracy unveiled. The crystalline archives were nothing like James had imagined. Instead of a physical library, he found himself floating in what appeared to be the heart of a galaxy, surrounded by streams of living light that carried millions of years of alien knowledge. Focus, Lyria's thought voice guided him. She hovered nearby, her crystalline form almost invisible against the cosmic backdrop. The information will come to you if you let it. It had been 2 weeks since the engagement announcement, and James had spent every spare moment preparing for the trials. The first one was supposed to be the easiest, a simple test of his ability to navigate crystalline knowledge structures. But nothing about their technology was simple to a human mind. I'm trying, he responded, attempting to direct his thoughts as she'd taught him. But it's like drinking from a fire hose made of starlight. A tendril of energy reached out from Lyria, touching his temple. The contact sent warmth spreading through his mind, helping him focus. The streams of light began to make more sense, forming patterns he could almost read. That's when he saw it. Wait, he called out, mentally grabbing onto a particular stream of data. Show me that again. The information crystallized before him, technical specifications for Lyria's ship, including details of the sabotage that had forced her to seek help at Luna Base. But something was wrong with the data. These signatures, he said, his military training kicking in. They're not external. The sabotage came from inside your ship. Lyria's patterns shifted to a dark, stormy gray. That's impossible. Only members of the High Council have access to those systems. Exactly. James pulled up more data streams, his mind finally working in sync with the alien technology. Look at these access logs. Someone used High Council credentials to disable your navigation array. Someone who knew exactly where you'd end up. My father? Lyria's thought voice wavered. No. James sorted through more information. These credentials belong to Council member Zax. And there's more. He grabbed another stream of data. Communications between Zax and something called the Shadowed Concordat. Lyria's form went almost transparent with shock. The Concordat is a myth, a secret organization supposedly working to prevent lesser species from joining the galactic community. They believe sharing advanced technology will lead to the destruction of all civilizations. Not such a myth. James displayed more communications. Zax has been working with them for years. Your father's push for alliance with Earth threatened their plans. They needed to stop it. So they sabotaged my ship, Lyria reasoned, her patterns turning angry red. Hoping I'd either die or that humans would respond with hostility to my arrival. Instead, they got me, James said with a grim smile. And our engagement. Which forced both governments to accelerate diplomatic relations. Lyria's patterns swirled with realization. Their plan backfired. A new data stream caught James's attention, and his blood ran cold. No, he said. This was just the beginning. Look. The information showed detailed plans for what appeared to be a massive attack, scheduled to coincide with the final trial. The shadowed Concordat meant to eliminate both him and Lyria, using their deaths to spark a war between Earth and the Dominion. "We have to warn them," Lyria started, but James caught her arm. "Wait." He pulled up more communications. "The Concordat has infiltrators everywhere. If we alert them, they'll just accelerate their timeline." He met her three-eyed gaze. "We need proof that will convince both governments at once." "The trial of spirit," Lyria said suddenly. "The heart of the Dominion doesn't just test worthiness, it's connected to our entire civilization's knowledge network. If you could access it, I could broadcast the evidence to everyone simultaneously." James nodded. "But that's the final trial. We still have to get through the trial of body." Lyria's patterns shifted to a determined gold. "Then we better make sure you pass it. Because now it's not just our marriage at stake, it's the future of both our species." James reached out, taking her crystalline hand in his. The contact sent sparks of energy dancing between them. "We'll stop them," he promised. "Together." Her patterns brightened at his touch, taking on that rosy hue he'd come to recognize. "Together," she agreed. "But James, the trial of body is tomorrow, and no human has ever faced the guardian of the ancient gates. No human has ever been engaged to the first daughter of the crystalline dominion either," he pointed out. "I'm getting used to doing impossible things." As they extracted themselves from the archives, James felt the weight of their discovery settling on his shoulders. He'd come to the trial expecting a test of his worthiness. Instead, he'd stumbled onto a conspiracy that threatened everything. Looking at Lyria, seeing the worry and determination in her patterns, he realized something else too. What had started as an accidental engagement had become something much more real. Now he just had to survive long enough to tell her that. The Guardian's challenge. The ancient gates loomed before James, their crystalline surface reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. At 20 stories tall, they were carved from a single piece of living crystal, thrumming with energy that made his teeth ache. The guardian that protected them made the gates look small by comparison. "Remember," Lyria's thought voice touched his mind, "the guardian responds to intent as much as action. It's not just a test of physical prowess." James nodded, trying to keep his breathing steady. The guardian was a construct of pure energy, roughly humanoid but composed of swirling galaxies and nebulae. Its three heads tracked his movement as he approached, each face wearing a different expression: joy, sorrow, and something unreadable. "James Harrison of Earth," the Guardian's voice resonated through his bones, "you seek passage through the ancient gates. Few aliens have attempted this trial. None have survived." "Encouraging," James muttered. Louder, he said, "I accept the challenge." The Guardian's joy face smiled. Its sorrow face wept stellar fire. The third face remained impassive. "Then let us begin." The attack came without warning. A tendril of pure energy lashed out, faster than human reflexes should have been able to track. But James had spent weeks training with Lyria, learning to feel the flow of crystalline energy. He moved with the attack instead of against it, letting it pass through the space where he had been. "Good," the Guardian's joy face beamed. "You learn quickly." More attacks followed, each one testing a different aspect of his training. James dodged, weaved, and occasionally redirected the energy as Lyria had taught him. His muscles burned with effort, but he kept moving. "You cannot dodge forever," the sorrow face wailed. "All things must end." James felt rather than saw the next attack coming from behind. He dropped and rolled, but not quite fast enough. Energy grazed his shoulder, sending pain shooting down his arm. The Guardian was right, he couldn't keep this up indefinitely. That's when he noticed something. Each attack left traces in the air, patterns of energy that lingered for microseconds. They reminded him of Lyria's emotional patterns, but more structured. It's a language, he realized aloud. The attacks weren't random, they were telling a story. The Guardian's third face showed interest for the first time. You see more than most. James focused on the patterns as he continued to evade. Joy, sorrow, and balance. The three faces. The three trials. The three eyes of Lyria's people. Everything in their culture came in threes, representing the fundamental forces they believed governed the universe. Understanding bloomed in his mind. This wasn't just a physical test, it was a demonstration of his comprehension of their most basic beliefs. The next attack came, and instead of dodging, James stood his ground. He raised his hands, matching the Guardian's stance. When the energy reached him, he didn't fight or evade. He became a conduit, letting it flow through him and back to its source. All three faces of the Guardian spoke in unison, "You understand. The trial isn't about proving I'm strong enough to survive your attacks," James said, maintaining the energy flow. "It's about proving I understand enough to know when not to fight." Yes. The Guardian's energy began to withdraw. Strength without wisdom is meaningless. Wisdom without strength is helpless. Only in balance can one truly grow. The ancient gates began to swing open, revealing a portal of swirling light. But before James could step through, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Red warning lights pulsed along the crystalline walls. "James!" Lyria's thought voice carried panic. "The Concordat, they're moving early. They've launched attacks on both Earth and Dominion targets. The High Council is in emergency session." The Guardian's three faces turned to James. "The trial is complete. You may proceed to the final test." "There's no time," James argued. "If we don't stop the Concordat now, there won't be a final trial." "Then you forfeit your claim?" James looked at the portal, then back at Lyria. The rosy hue of her patterns had been replaced by urgent crimson. Everything they discovered in the archives pointed to this being a coordinated attack. If they didn't expose the conspiracy now, both their civilizations would be manipulated into war. "No," he said firmly. "I don't forfeit anything. But the trial of spirit isn't just about me proving my worth anymore. It's about saving both our peoples." He reached out to Lyria. "And I'm done doing these trials alone." Her patterns shifted to match his determination as she took his hand. Together, they stepped through the portal. The Guardian watched them go, all three faces now wearing the same expression, hope. Behind them, the ancient gates sealed shut, and ahead lay their greatest challenge, if they could reach it in time. The heart of the Dominion waited, and with it, their only chance to expose the truth before it was too late. Two hearts, one universe. The heart of the Dominion pulsed before them, a massive crystalline structure that seemed to contain an entire universe within its faceted surface. Energy cascaded through it in waves, connecting every member of the crystalline Dominion in a vast network of shared consciousness. "The council chamber's been locked down," Lyria reported, her patterns flickering with urgency. "Zax has convinced them that the attacks are coming from Earth. They're voting on a military response." James studied the heart, remembering everything they'd learned. "How long until they reach a decision?" "Minutes at most." Lyria's third eye fixed on him. "The trial of spirit requires hours of preparation. We don't have that kind of time. Then we'll have to improvise." James stepped forward, placing his hand on the heart's surface. Raw energy surged through him, nearly driving him to his knees. It was like trying to contain a supernova with his bare hands. "James, stop." Lyria moved to pull him back. "Without proper preparation, the feedback could kill you." "Trust me," he gasped, fighting to stay conscious. "Remember what we learned in the archives? About your ship's sabotage?" Understanding dawned in her patterns. The access credentials. They're still active in the system. Exactly. James grabbed her hand with his free one. I can't channel this much energy alone, but together. Lyria's patterns blazed with determination. She pressed her other hand to the heart, linking their energies. The pain immediately diminished as she helped him bear the load. Through their connected consciousness, James could feel the vast network of the Dominion spreading out before them. Millions of crystalline minds linked together, including the council chamber where Zax was presenting fabricated evidence of Earth's aggression. Now, James pushed with everything he had, using Zax's own security access to broadcast the evidence they discovered. The council chamber's privacy shields crumbled as proof of the Concordat's existence flooded every connected mind. Communications logs. Strategic plans. Financial transfers. The entire conspiracy laid bare for both civilizations to see. This is impossible. Zax's thought voice boomed through the network. The heart cannot be accessed by an alien. He's not alone. Lyria's consciousness joined James's, their combined strength stabilizing the connection. Her next words echoed through every crystalline mind in the Dominion, and he's not just an alien. He's my chosen partner, who has proven his worth not through mere trials, but by fighting to protect both our peoples. James felt the council's shock ripple through the network, followed by waves of revelation as they processed the evidence. But Zax wasn't finished. Through their connection, James sensed the counselor activating some kind of failsafe. If we cannot keep humanity isolated, Zax's thought voice rang with fanatic determination, then both civilizations must fall. The Concordat will not allow lesser beings to corrupt the galaxy. Warning signals blared through the network. On Earth, hidden weapons platforms emerged from lunar craters, targeting major cities. Throughout the Dominion, sleeper agents began activating dormant protocols designed to destroy key infrastructure. The heart, Lyria gasped. Its regulatory systems are failing. He's trying to trigger a cascade failure that will sever all crystalline connections. Millions will die from the psychic shock. James felt the energy growing unstable, threatening to tear apart the very fabric of their civilization. But in that moment of crisis, he finally understood what the Guardian's third face had been showing: transcendence. Your people believe everything comes in threes, he said, pulling Lyria closer. Joy, sorrow, and balance. Mind, body, and spirit. But there's something more fundamental. Past, present, and future, she finished, her patterns synchronizing with his. Together, they reached deeper into the heart than any had gone before. Past the surface network, past the stored knowledge, to the quantum level where energy and consciousness became one. Instead of fighting the cascade failure, they guided it, reshaping it. The failsafe protocols shattered. The weapons platforms went dark. And through every crystalline mind in the Dominion, through every human computer connected to Earth's quantum array, a new understanding bloomed. The heart's energy stabilized, but it was forever changed. Human and crystalline consciousness had touched for the first time, creating something entirely new. The barrier between their species hadn't been broken, it had been transcended. In the council chamber, Zax and his conspirators found themselves facing not just justice, but a fundamental refutation of their fears. Humanity and the Dominion hadn't destroyed each other by connecting. They had evolved. Hours later, James and Lyria stood in Luna Base's observation dome, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. Her patterns shimmered with contentment as she rested her head on his shoulder. You never actually completed the trial of spirit, she mused. Technically, our engagement could still be considered void. James laughed. I think saving both our civilizations and revolutionizing the fundamental nature of interspecies relations might count as a passing grade. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. But if you want, we could start over. Do things properly this time. Her patterns shifted to that rosy hue he'd grown to love. I crashed my ship on purpose, remember? I chose you before any of this began. Her 3 eyes sparkled with mischief. Though I have to admit, you've exceeded expectations. Speaking of expectations. James nodded toward the quantum array, which was already being modified with crystalline technology. I don't think anyone expected first contact to end quite like this. No, Lyria agreed, her thought voice warm in his mind. They made you marry an alien girl, and what happened next shocked everyone. As they stood together, watching their 2 civilizations begin to merge, James reflected that some accidents were really destiny in disguise. Sometimes the most unlikely coincidences could lead to the most amazing discoveries. And sometimes, just sometimes, an accidental engagement could turn out to be exactly what 2 civilizations needed to find their way to the stars.